Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fed Up, your no BS nutrition podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Marie, certified personal trainer and nutrition specialist, working with clients since 2014. After swimming up diet culture's bullshit stream for so many years, I am fed the absolute up with how miserable it's making people feel when we are supposed to be getting healthier. This podcast is here to help you gain your sanity back so you can stop yo-yoing once and for all and finally learn how to trust yourself so you can enjoy food again without fear or shame while still getting to your health goals. My aim is to teach you how to detect the BS in not just the food and diet industries, but in all realms of life, because I know that, like me, we are all just a little fed up. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, good friends, and welcome to another episode. Thank you so much for tuning back in, and I hope that if you are enjoying this podcast, you will go and leave me a review wherever you are listening from. And I don't think there's any reviews yet, so if you could just help a sister out with my baby little podcast, that would be great, or share it to your social media, or send it to a friend, all that jazz, help me out. Anyway, I wanted today to take this time to talk about this general theme of why it is so much harder to lose weight over time. And generally, people seem to lose the same 10 to 30 pounds over and over again. And it seems that the more someone diets, the more someone has to diet. You know what I mean? And I've worked with people for a decade, and over again, I hear the same story. It's like they've tried for years or for decades to lose weight, and they're either the same weight or they cycle the same weight or they're even heavier. So this isn't for lack of trying. This is not for lack of willpower. I don't want to say that people just aren't trying hard enough or, well, you're doing the wrong thing. Like, that is not my angle, regardless of who I'm talking to. But most people, I find, are either, they might be inaccurate or inconsistent, sure. But one thing that I'm focusing on this episode is it seems like you're doing all the right things. So I'm not really talking about, again, I'll touch on maybe we're just not being consistent enough, that kind of thing. But a lot of people eat healthy, or they generally are putting in a lot of effort and they're seeing little results. What the hell is happening? And yes, again, sometimes it's inconsistency. Sometimes you're straight up lying about it. I don't know, but we're not talking about those today. What I want to talk about today is what happens to your body, your brain, your metabolism when you diet, i.e., go into a caloric deficit. So we know that, or maybe you don't know, that's okay, but I've said it in previous episodes that in order to lose weight, you must be consuming less calories than you burn, thus being in a quote unquote deficit, and your body is forced to use energy stored in fat cells to run its biological functions. And this is not debatable. This is a law of thermodynamics. So I know there's a lot of nutrition and health information out there. It's not calories, it's this. Okay, we're not debating that today. We're taking it as fact, because it is, that the law of thermodynamics states, I believe it's the third law, or is it the first law? It's the first law. You cannot create something out of nothing. We cannot create fat cells out of nothing. We create them out of the energy we consume from food, period. That being said, let's review some of the basic terms here when we're talking about calories in versus calories out. And again, I'm not just going to be beating a dead horse with this. It is leading somewhere. All right, I promise. So first things first, we're looking at your total calorie expenditure and your total calories that your body uses in different categories here. So the first category is your basal metabolic rate, which is your body at rest when it's not even digesting food, because that's a different category. So your heart is beating, you're thinking maybe, you're sleeping maybe, your lungs are working, your kidneys are working, right? But it's all the subconscious autonomic functions of your body of just keeping you alive. Again, outside of digestion. Then you have your digestion, your TEF, thermic effect of food, which means that it does require some energy, calories, to extract the energy, calories, from the food we eat. So remember, energy is synonymous with calories because calorie is a unit of energy. That's all it is. It's a measurement. So some foods require more energy to digest, such as protein, to get the energy and to use the protein. Fat, fiber, and protein are also slower to digest, which means they will fill you up longer. And also protein is digested in the stomach, so it's like filling up your stomach a little bit longer. And that can overall help you eat less in the long term too. It takes the meal longer, so to speak, or extends the meal. So in your total daily energy expenditure, which we call your TD, this is your total amount of energy or calories your body is expending, including your BMR, your TEF, plus your actual activity, which we have your NEAT, N-E-A-T, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is the stuff you do that's not considered purposeful exercise. That does use calories, which means this includes fidgeting, gesturing with your hands, talking, walking, carrying your groceries, doing your chores, taking care of your children, picking up your children, nursing your baby. Like those are things that you just like have to do that isn't on purpose to exercise or burn calories, right? You're just doing them. You're just existing. And this would even include what your job is. So your occupational activity. Someone who sits at a desk is going to have a lower NEAT than a mailman who walks door to door, right? Or a server who walks 20,000 steps in 5 hours, which is what I do some days. So someone who fidgets more as well, or maybe they stand up and they pace more often, like they burn way more calories than people who get locked into a screen for 8 hours and never move. There are people like that. That's normal. That happens. We're all different. But this is going to affect your NEAT, your energy that you are expending, and you don't even realize it. Again, if you have dogs, you're just walking your dogs because like they need exercise. You're not really doing it for you. You could include that in your NEAT. But if you're going on a run with your dogs, that's probably included in your actual exercise activity, which again is on top of all of this. And it's a pretty small amount. Like you're only really purposefully exercising like 1 hour a day, 30 minutes a day, 2 hours a day if you're intense, 3 hours a day if you're really intense and you're in sports. But overall, the majority of your calories burned throughout your day is going to be your basal metabolic rate plus your NEAT, and then a little bit of your food digestion and a little bit of your exercise. But most people focus on the eating less and exercising more, right? Because it is fairly difficult to just change your BMR. There's a lot of factors that affect that. We'll go into it. And those are things that you can control a little bit more, right? But it is a small amount of the calories expended. So ultimately, the way to adjust this is to be in a deficit, is to just consume less calories. But this is not so simple. Now, so even though the law of thermodynamics says if we want to lose weight, if we want to burn fat, we need to be eating less and moving more. Yes, but this is a lot easier said than done, obviously, but for more reasons than just your lifestyle or your discipline or your willpower. Our bodies have ways to compensate for eating less and moving. So that's what we're going to talk about during this episode. And let's just use like a hypothetical example that you are 200 pounds and you've been the same weight for a while. So you're most likely eating at a maintenance calorie, per week, probably. Maybe not every day is the same. It's, pretty hard to tell too if you're weighing yourself like sporadically. But let's say for a week, you're about the same on average, week to week to week to week. For a couple of weeks, you're probably already eating at a maintenance. So, what we want to do is essentially figure out what that maintenance is. Now, that is not always easier said than done. As soon as you start tracking your food, you start eating better. So if I tell a client, okay, let's see what you're eating right now, right? Like, I want to see what your maintenance is because you've been stuck at 200 pounds for years. Okay, you're probably eating the same thing. Track your food. But now you're already eating better because 1, you're tracking it. 2, you have to show me. 3, you hired a personal trainer. Like, you're trying to better your nutrition anyway. So it's hard to tell what your maintenance already is. And then people end up again, dropping their calories pretty low. And so what happens is, which we'll get to there. I'm getting ahead of myself. So first things first, what people might think happens is you gain 2 pounds here and 2 pounds there and 2 pounds here and 2 pounds there. This is not necessarily the case of gaining fat. You're gaining fat over the course of time, which is why I always recommend that you weigh yourself daily and take the average from the week, which again, we'll talk about a little bit more. But weight gain does not happen in black or white. When you eat, you are technically in a calorie surplus now as you digest the food, and then your body uses that food for the processes it needs to do over the next few hours immediately. And then, storage and food over the next, I don't know, I think your colon takes 60 hours to fully digest. So your body's doing a whole lot of stuff within that 60 hours, right? Inside and outside in terms of the actual activity you're doing. So when your body runs out of quote unquote the food, but you're still using energy, or you used a ton more energy today than the food you actually ate, that's when your body will start to burn your fat stores and then convert the fat into the energy, which can run your cells, right? So when we talk about your cells preferring glucose and carbohydrates to use for energy first, and then it uses protein and fats, this does not mean if you stop eating carbohydrates, then it uses fat cells. When we talk about fat, in your diet being used for energy versus your fat cells long-term storage, they're a little bit different. We won't get into that in this episode. It's a little bit complex, even for my understanding at this point. Catch me this fall, though, because my macronutrient class is in fall. So we'll go over that in much more detail, I'm sure, then. But anyway, when your body uses carbs for energy, and you deprive your body of carbs, your body is forced to get glucose other ways because your brain is an organ that only can use glucose to fire its functions. BT dubs. So evolution has figured out that when humans have been in periods of famine or periods of low access to carbohydrate foods, we can develop ketones and use that for energy. What ketones are is partially broken down triglycerides. Triglycerides are fatty acids. So glucose, sugar, carbohydrates fuel the system and the cycle that breaks down your fat, your triglycerides. When you don't have glucose, your body cannot break down that fat. So it turns into ketones. That's what your body uses for energy. Still not stored fat, by the way. Because your body will do this even with enough calories, but not glucose. That is why you can be in ketosis, be on a ketogenic diet and not lose any weight, because you could still be in a surplus of calories with fat and protein. So with that surplus of calories of fat and protein, your body goes, oh, cool, I used the protein, I used the fat that I needed, I used the ketones that I needed. Now I still have all this excess energy, because energy, again, calories is a unit of energy. It's not a tangible thing like glucose is a molecule. What the energy is this transfer of electrons. You're looking at ATP. You're looking at a whole lot of functional stuff that happens. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, as they say, right? When your body doesn't have the glucose, it'll use ketones. When your body doesn't have the calories, it uses stored fat. This happens over a period of time because it's not going to happen within one meal, within a 6 to 60 hour digestion period. This happens chronically. This is why also you're going to have fluctuations that have nothing to do with fat loss and fat gain. It mostly has to do with your sodium and your water content. If you worked out and lifted weights, your muscles might be holding on to more water and you'll weigh more. If you had alcohol or if you didn't sleep well for some reason, like if you don't get enough sleep, you weigh a little bit more. So there's a lot of things that fluctuate that. You could take a poop and lose 3 pounds, all right? I don't know if your poop weighs 3 pounds. That's kind of a lot, but maybe it does. I don't know. I don't think I've ever Googled what like an average poop weighs, and I've never weighed my poop. So anyway, moving on from that, different macronutrients, carbs, protein, fats, are not necessarily what's going to get us to lose weight. Now, they do all have their own function in weight loss, which we will talk about. You want carbs so that you have the energy to move and to work out. Otherwise, you're not burning the calories. You want the protein to maintain muscle mass while you're in a calorie deficit so that your body doesn't go, oh, you know what? I should eat my muscle before I eat my fat. Okay? Keep your protein high so it doesn't do that. And then you also still need good fats too, because it's good for your hormone health. It's good for your brain and your heart, like omega-3s and things like that. Like the healthy unsaturated fats are really good for you. That's why avocado and things like that are better for you than like butter. So anyway, we want different macronutrients, but those macronutrients are what make up total calories. So too much of any of the macronutrients is going to give you excess calories, which is going to be stored as fat. So when you gain fat, what your fat cells are doing is they're increasing in size. So you don't actually get more fat cells, you increase them in size. And when you lose fat, they shrink in size. Fun fact, this is not in my notes, this is just like in my head because it's a fun fact. Liposuction removes the fat cells. So I've had clients that had liposuction in like the 80s and 90s, and then they end up gaining weight again because calorie surplus over 20-year time. Again, maybe not all at once, but slowly but surely, they end up gaining weight. But since your fat cells don't exist, they can't gain or shrink where you got lipo. So they would have really like flat stomachs or wherever they got lipo, usually in the lower tummy area. But then they would get their quote unquote spare tire or their love handles up below their bust, almost like by their armpits or their boobs, their arms, their thighs, saddlebags, quote unquote. I hate using that term, but all of the places. But their tummies were flat. So it was a very odd body type that doesn't really exist in nature that much because your body is going to distribute the fat wherever it freaking wants. And this is something too that you can't control. Some people gain more fat in their lower half. Some people gain more fat in their midsection. Some people, what we call visceral fat around your organs. You can be skinny fat, which means you look skinny from the outside, but you have no muscle tissue and you have more adipose tissue around your organs. That's not good either. You can still have type 2 diabetes from that, and you look, not your average adult onset diabetic would look. So I digress. When you get fat, your fat cells increase in size. When you lose fat, they decrease in size. So these fat cells, or adipose tissue, that's what that is, are also an endocrine tissue, which means that the fat cells are excreting hormones like leptin and a couple other things like resistin that play a part in metabolism, appetite regulation, even insulin sensitivity. So diabetes is characterized by a sensitivity to sugar, right? We all know diabetes and sugar are connected. What you don't realize is the reason you're insulin resistant is because of adipose tissue a lot of times, because the adipose tissue is interfering with your insulin response. So hormones like leptin, for example, is a hormone that's excreted when your fat cells decrease in size. I might get this backwards. But anyway, leptin's responsible for the appetite because when your fat cells decrease in size, it sends a signal to your brain that says, oh, we're having to eat into our fat cells, find more food. And then your appetite increases. So this whole cascading effect happens when you're in a deficit and your entire body fights against you. Now, this is not the same thing as starvation mode, mind you, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So when we are shrinking our fat cells due to a calorie deficit, that physical shrinkage is what sends the signal to your brain that literally primes your appetite to, increase and to say, go find more food. We're losing energy, right? It's a survival mechanism. Cool. Your body also becomes more efficient, meaning you will burn less energy to do the same task. We don't really know how your body's able to do this. What I mean is, say it normally takes 10 calories to do something. Now your body finds a way to do that same exact thing, but only use 8 calories. Interesting. It's fascinating. You will also find ways to conserve the energy in terms of you talk less, you gesture less, you'll laugh less, you walk slower, you think slower, you walk less, you'll stand less. You do all of these things very subconsciously. So to you, you're like, no, I'm still exercising, but you don't realize you're moving slower. You're taking longer between your sets. You're not able to push out the last 3 to 5 reps. You didn't want to go heavier because you don't have the energy. You walk a little bit slower. You take smaller steps, right? You find reasons not to stand up more throughout the day. Like, this is so common. I see it in some of my clients. I can tell when people come to me, they're like in extreme diet mode. They're like gray in the face almost. They have like no facial like gesturing. And then when I start like increasing their food, or they're able to kind of have a diet break and we increase their calories or whatever it may be, all of a sudden, they're like making a lot more facial gestures. They're talking with their hands more. They walk into the gym a little faster. They're standing up taller. It's interesting. Maybe not just the calories, but I can tell too when I have a very energetic client and then they go on like a detox or like a crazy diet. I'm like, girl, where's your energy? Like, what? And you might not even realize it. Okay. Some of you might, but you might not realize it. So what I try to have people do is you need like objective measures a lot of times. So you'll naturally decrease your steps by like 3 to 5K, even when you don't realize you do. So if you're tracking it, you need to like be purposeful about getting that 8K every day. Otherwise, you're going to naturally just start decreasing your steps, or again, like shorten your walk or whatever it may be, because if you're not being intentional about it, your body is finding a way to conserve it. So all of that conservation methods, while your brain is telling you to eat more, we call this metabolic adaptation. It specifically describes your body using the less energy when it's given less energy. Again, not the same thing as starvation mode. Starvation mode, people say, oh, because I'm starving, because I'm not feeding myself, then when I eat, my body just holds on to all the calories. I mean, like, it's like half true. It's like not really how the science works, but I get what they mean. So if you're truly starving though, if you're in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. But being in a deficit does slow down your metabolism. So I would rather call it metabolism slowing mode rather than starvation mode, but we know what it means, okay? So I won't split hairs here. When you start out dieting at 1,200 frickin' calories, your body starts using 1,200 frickin' calories. And now it's your new maintenance. Or you try so hard to eat 1,200 calories that you're hungry so much that you end up like snacking or eating more than you plan to and don't track it because you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Or you end up binging on the weekend, or you end up only allowing, dieting for a couple days or a couple weeks and then you go crazy, right? Or you do a couple of months even. I know people that'll diet for like 3-4 months and then they don't diet for the rest of the year, which also doesn't help. So when you start out low, you have nowhere to go. That's my motto. I'm putting it on a shirt. I need to write that down. When you start out at 2,500, which is probably what you're already eating, then you end up being more consistent with that calorie count as well as your activity. And then you actually end up hitting 2,500 consistently daily for weeks, maybe even months. Now, if you're maintaining your weight, we know you're eating at a maintenance. So when we drop it down to 2,000, we know you're in a calorie deficit. And then your body will store or will burn the stored fat. And then you lose weight. Now, if you lose weight, say you lose 10% of your body weight, you were 200 pounds, now you're 180 pounds. 2,000 calories is now your new maintenance at 180 pounds. So you're going to plateau. Your weight loss will stall, and it will also get harder to lose weight the more weight you lose. Losing 100 pounds is actually easier the first 90 pounds, and then the last 10 pounds is like pulling teeth. It's also a lot harder for clients to lose 5 to 10 pounds than it is for a client to lose 50 to 60 pounds. Okay? So keep that in mind. Again, it's not linear. It's the same reason why newbie strength gains are funny. It's like 5 pounds to 50 pounds, no problemo. But going from 5 pounds to 50 pounds and then going from 50 pounds to 100 pounds, like, no, you're going to plateau. You're going to, stick a point where you kind of have a box. Let's call it a strength box where, again, like for me, dumbbells for like overhead press, I exponentially increased until I hit about 30, 35, maybe 40 on a good day. Maybe I've topped out, I think, at 45. I don't remember if I've done 50 or not. I can't recall. I'd have to look. But going from like 30 to 40 pounds was a lot easier than going from 40 to 50 pounds with an overhead press. All right. Same thing with losing weight. Going from 200 to 180, a little bit easier than 180 to 160, a little bit easier than 160 to 140. And then if you were to just keep linearly going down, like you can't, like your bones weigh something. Okay. So if you're also lifting weights, remember that some of that weight is bone density, muscle mass. That's important. So I always say, like, don't just look at your weight, look at your inches, look at your actual fat and your body fat percentage rather than just your weight, right? But it's normal to stall. It's not going to be linear. Most people will give up here, or they end up getting extreme, right? They're like, it's not working anymore. They give up, or they're like, I got to do something crazy, or they switch it up too much. But like, you've got to just keep eating at 2,000 calories. That's your new maintenance at 180. Give yourself a little break. Give yourself a mini vacation, because we want to offset some of that metabolic adaptation. So when you give yourself a little break, when you eat at maintenance for a little bit, then we drop it back down to 1,750 and you lose more weight. But like, we don't need to drop it down to 1,200. We can drop it down just a little bit, right? Because you're eating at maintenance and now you're in a deficit. Now, a lot of times what happens is people, again, will start to gain some muscle. So your BMR is increasing. You're burning more calories than you used to. But if you're 100, 200 plus pounds overweight, you're not going to see that at first. So again, it depends on how much weight you have to lose, but let's just use our 200-pound example. You're now 180 pounds. Now you're 170 pounds. Well, again, you're eating 1,750 calories, and that's your new maintenance. But also, you're a smaller person. But also, maybe you are more active or this, that, and the other. Like, we kind of can get a little bit more nitpicky as you lose weight, but like, it's got to be consistent. And this doesn't happen when you switch up your diet plan all the time, when you're not tracking accurately or consistently. And granted, there are tons of other ways to do this besides tracking. It's still a calorie deficit, but I know that the numbers can get really crazy, or just it doesn't freaking work for some people. So just by watching their portions or changing up, again, like how much they're eating or what they're eating or the calorie and nutrient density of what they're eating, they can kind of do the same thing. Same rules apply whether you know how many calories you're eating or not. All right. If you're not losing weight, you're just not in a deficit. It's the definition. It is the law, just like gravity. And most of my clients who aren't losing weight, it's because they've undergone major metabolic adaptations over years of yo-yo dieting. So their maintenance might actually be like 1,300 calories because your body has compensated so fucking much. So you eat anything over 1,300 calories, you gain weight, which is like literally any food. You go out a couple times a week and that's over 1,200 calories, right? So something that I try to get people to do is even if you are at like 1,200, 1,300 calories for your maintenance, like let's confirm it. So like, let's try to eat at 1,500 calories. Let's work at as consistent as possible, whatever it may be, right? And we'll kind of drop it down. We'll play with it, but you've got to have some patience. All right. We've got to become a little less sensitive to the fluctuations. It's not going to be linear. And when I have people who are really on a mission for weight loss, I recommend weighing daily because number one, it helps you see fluctuations, which hopefully helps you become less sensitive to them, but sometimes not. Hopefully it does. Usually it does. And then you take the average of the entire week and we can actually see if you're losing weight. A lot of people are like, I'm not losing weight. I gained 5 pounds. All of a sudden we do this and I'm like, girl, you are losing weight. What are you talking about? But then you weigh yourself on a high day. You freak the fuck out because you haven't weighed yourself in a week and you think you've gained 5 pounds. In reality, we did a heavy leg day yesterday. You're swollen. Like your muscles are literally swollen. They're holding on to muscle. You also had a little bit extra salt because you had a hard workout. So like you had one of those electrolyte powders. There's reasons why you might weigh 5 pounds heavier. Maybe you're also like 4 days before your period. You know what I mean? There are things that then you do in response to that high number, in response to feeling like shit because you're not losing weight, nothing's working, meh. You're throwing yourself a pity party and then you sabotage it. You go and you eat all the food or you end up skipping or kind of like half-assing your next couple of workouts because it's not working anyway, or you just quit altogether, right? You just like stop your diet program. You just like, fuck it. I don't know. That could work. That could happen. When you download something like Happy Scale, by the way, that's an app that you can weigh yourself, track it manually, or I think they also have like a scale that links to it, right? Download this app and it'll do the average per day and you can kind of like see the line, like the chart of your weight, and you can see it almost look like a stock market, right? Like it kind of goes up, kind of goes down. Okay, maybe not today. I'm scared to look at my accounts, but overall, right, the stock market increases. It's worth it to invest. You're going to have small dips throughout the days, throughout the weeks, the months, the years. You're going to have large dips even. But overall, keep it going because we want to look at the average. So, considering all of this, I want to help my clients achieve their goals, weight loss or not. But sometimes I think even my weight loss clients, they're so focused on it. And at this point, dare I say it, they're blinded by desperation because they've tried so many freaking things. There are companies that prey on this. The reason 99% of people cannot lose weight who have attempted to lose weight is because all of the ways that they've tried to lose weight is like the way companies hope you never are successful. So that doesn't help anybody, right? And when you consume so much different information too, usually it's polarizing information, especially on the media, about why you have tummy fat or why, you don't see a difference in your workouts and what's really wrong with you and your hormones and this and that, right? Like you're desperate for an answer that puts the blame and puts the reason everywhere else and gives us, frankly, an excuse for why we don't have the body of our dreams. And one, I want you to step back. I want you to freaking pause, step back, and realize, number one, you're never going to look like anybody else but you. All right? So I want people to have a realistic expectation too. I've had people be like, I want to look like this. And I'm like, cool. Dude, you could have so many surgeries and lose 50 pounds. You'll never look like that. Like, what are you talking about? So sometimes we have really weird expectations for what we should weigh, what our body types are actually realistic to look like even after weight loss. And that doesn't mean you have to change your goal away from weight loss. This is what I think even sometimes I get in the habit of, wanting to do this where I want to tell people like, stop focusing on weight loss. It's not about that. But like your goal can still be weight loss. But I've met people and I've dealt with people and I'm like, dude, you're never going to enjoy this if you keep just hating on your body for being heavier, that you resent this whole process. You hate it so much because you hate yourself so much. We need to stop that mindset because that is not going to help you. That's my whole thing is like, we don't got to change your goal. You got to change your mindset though, because it's not going to help you get to your goal. So it doesn't mean that you can't lose fat or want to look better, but have to be a little realistic, just saying. And number 2, there are no magical foods, supplements, blood tests that are going to be the solution for you. If you want to lose weight, you've got to pause. We have to figure out if it's, binging episodes or emotional and stress eating, because even with a proper meal plan, you can't follow it. That's a different situation. Let's work on that first. You are never going to lose weight with a calorie deficit if you aren't addressing that. If we can look at what we're accurately currently eating and how much, it's probably more than you think. And most people don't eat the same amount of calories every day. So maybe we need to look at what you're doing every week. This takes some practice. This takes some time. And like I said earlier, it can be really tricky because as soon as we start tracking it or as soon as you start working with a coach, you're like, I eat so well. Why isn't it working? And I'm like, okay, hold on. We're just in the beginning stages here, right? Like, don't get frustrated here and because you're going to give up or you're going to sabotage. And then we got to understand how metabolic adaptation works. So I hope that this episode really helped with that and just kind of shed some light on as we go for longer term weight loss, we need to have a real plan with dieting breaks, with metabolic adaptation offset, with lifting heavy weight so that we're increasing muscle mass and BMR, right? Like there needs to be an all-encompassing fat loss protocol that is much more than just eat as little as possible, right? Because there's more involved here. And when you keep yo-yoing, when you keep doing this shit, you are setting your metabolism back again and again. So what we're going to do is, here's your steps. I'll wrap this up. I want you to increase your basal metabolic rate through building more muscle mass via lifting weights. Muscles take more time to recover. Weightlifting has an afterburn effect where you are continuously burning calories up to 24 hours post-workout, which doesn't happen with cardio. But also increase your cardio. That's not going to hurt, right? Increase your exercise on purpose, walking, join a sports team, I don't know, go play tennis, swim, lift weights, all of that good stuff is going to help you, yes, but your NEAT, your non-exercise activity is even more important, which might mean get a freaking standing desk and use it. How many people I ask, oh, you have a standing desk, right? And they're like, yeah, but I don't use it. Girl, like why did you even spend that money then? But also like raise it and use it. Like, what are you doing? And then when you sit down, maybe sit on an exercise ball or something. I don't know. But maybe you need more playtimes with your kids. Get a freaking dog so you can walk it more. Like, find ways to increase your natural walking habits 100%. But also, you need to realize that you're going to have a decreased energy compensation, right? So track your steps. Actually have an objective source of, I've been doing these things. I've been lifting weights 3 times a week. I've been getting my 8,000 steps per day most days. And here's the freaking proof. Because sorry, sister, you are not a reliable source of information, even to yourself. Your brain fills in gaps. We tend to remember different things depending on if it's positive or negative. Like, you are not an objective, reliable source. Let's just get this out there, right? And then when you're also looking at decreasing your energy intake, maybe that's watching your portions, tracking your calories. Maybe that's increasing your protein and fiber so that we can carry your meal longer, right? You stay fuller longer. You tend to eat a little bit less overall. It has more volume when you eat like high fiber foods, and it's like a lot of food for a little amount of calories and I feel full. That's what we want. Maybe you need to work on timing your meals more regularly so that you're preventing binging and undereating and overeating and all of this stuff, right? You can switch a lot of your calories to 0-calorie beverages. There are things that work for different people, different ways. But we've got to have an objective source here, because just being like, well, I'm working really hard on losing weight, but nothing's working. What that tells me is you have a high amount of perceived effort that is an unreliable source. Meaning, not always, granted, you might be trying really, really freaking hard, right? But all that means is you're fucking up your metabolism because you're trying too hard. Almost. So, as I said before, you're going to track your weight properly. We're going to adjust your calories slowly. We're not going to be impatient. We're going to stick to it for longer than a week, longer than a month. And there are certain apps, by the way, that like will give you your calorie count. There's like one app I would recommend. It's called Carbon Diet Coach. It's by Lane Norton, Dr. Lane Norton, or BioLane if you follow him on social media. And his app actually adjusts your calorie needs as you lose weight, which is like brilliant. It's almost, I don't know if it's like AI or whatever it is, but the algorithm that the app does sees when you're plateauing. It sees when you are needing an adjustment, and it'll adjust your calories for you. Either you're losing weight too fast or you're losing weight, not fast enough or whatever it may be. And I think there's options to like plan for diet breaks and all of that stuff as well. And even to hire one of his coaches. I believe it does cost money, but I would pay money for this if I really wanted to use it for myself or my clients. I almost want to send him an email and be like, can we pay a business fee? Like I would want to pay a small monthly fee, not even small. I'll pay a big monthly fee for this in order for my clients to then like have a bulk membership to this app. I don't know. Maybe he'd be open to it. But if you are using an app, they can be really helpful. If you're not, it can be helpful to be working with a coach because, again, it can be tricky to be objective, to know exactly, well, am I eating enough or are my portions ridiculous? Whatever it may be, we can kind of work together on that. So if you are looking on working with somebody one-to-one, losing weight long-term, fat loss for life, that's what we're trying to do. No regain here. And again, it happens. I don't want you to be terrified to regain weight. That's another thing is like people think that they're better, thinner, and then they're like terrified to gain weight again. And then that creates a whole mess of issues. But like your body's going to fluctuate. There's different times in your life you're going to be heavier. It's not the end of the world. But if you want to lose weight, that's totally doable and a viable goal. And I would love to work with you. So definitely send me an email, hello@kaylamariefitness.com, or visit my website or DM me, whatever, get a hold of me, and we can definitely work on something for you. So I hope this episode helped just kind of give you some grace. Maybe, if anything, just realize like sometimes you've got to loosen up the reins a little bit, stop dieting so hard, you're fucking it up. And then we can come back to the ground and actually learn how to enjoy this process and eat for health and for fullness and for satisfaction, so that you don't hate everybody around you every time you're trying to lose weight, so that it never lasts because you end up hating your life, right? I know how that goes. I've seen it happen for a decade over and over again with my clients. So this is something that literally 9 out of 10 people, I would say, who want to lose weight, this is what they're dealing with, is they've been wanting to lose weight a long time, but the metabolic adaptation makes it a lot more challenging. So we can work with it. We can repair it, not fully. There is some science that says, it's kind of one of those, oh God, I don't want to say like it's permanent. We can improve it, but there does seem to be a lasting effect of this adaptation. So the quicker we can get on it, the better. So I'll chat with you guys next week. Hope this episode helped. Please leave me a review or shoot me a message if you enjoyed this podcast, and send it to a friend who you think would need it. So love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for being here, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please screenshot and tag me over on Instagram or leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening from. Your support means the world to me and only helps me get the No BS news out to more people. If you're interested in working with me in nutrition or personal training, check out my programs and courses on my website at kaylamariefitness.com and on Instagram at kaylamarie_fit. See you next week.